We're now streaming. Okay. All right. So good morning. Should I put this on all of your screens too, or just look up at the projection? Can you see it well, Shelly?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. I'm not going to put my screen on everybody's screens then, because it kind of lags things out. Okay, let me close out of Unity real quick. Don't need that open just yet. Okay, so I had a question from one of my students, and that was, or a couple of them actually, how to bring stuff from Maya into Substance Painter to do texturing work, and then how to send that over to Unity to get it inside the game engine or have it animated. So, let me just launch this file. So this is a student-made project of a rock, and they want to be able to use that in their scene inside of Unity to create better looking scenery. Okay, so let's see what she's got here.
You can exit out the hypershade.
Yeah, Maya's thinking for a minute. Okay, here we go. So it looks like you tried to do some material work already here.
Yeah.
Oh. That's cool. All right, so what do we got here? We got a rock. Looks pretty good. It's pretty low poly rock. Okay, so before we even go much further, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and get the UV maps correct. And the reason that I say that is it would be good to add some more height detail to this, like some sculpting onto it. But I want to show you, since I'm showing this whole process, go ahead and show you also how to take super high poly sculpting and bake that into a map to be applied onto the low poly version, because that's super powerful. Okay, so I'm going to just start off by renaming her polygon cube that she started with to rock. It's capital rock. Okay, and let's go ahead and look at the UV maps. So if you don't know what UVs are, they're basically just the in-between step from modeling to texturing. It's taking your 3D model surface and sort of cutting it open and laying it flat. That's basically what a UV map is. And your goals are to basically have that 2D version of your 3D model laid out in a way that it looks like it makes sense. So you want to have as few what Maya calls shells as possible, and then you also want to have it look like it makes sense. So in this case, since she's done a lot of modifications to it, probably don't want to have something like that. So one simple way we can get a UV map is just to do the automatic UV mapping in Maya. It usually does a pretty good job depending on your object. So if you go up to UV and choose automatic, and the default setting is just to use 6 projection planes. So if I hit apply, close that out, we can see there are 6 different planes that it's projecting from to get those UVs. Alright, so now let's go back to the UV editor and see what we've got. Okay. Turn off our texture so we can see them a little bit. So this seems like it looks a little more like the actual rock. Okay. So now what we want to do is kind of just go through here and see where the automatic screwed up and where it's not good. So I can see like a strip of polygons right here in between the other ones, and that's not good. Because it's actually got that as one shell, but they're kind of going on top of each other. Now we could very easily just take this straight over to Painter. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about UVs today, because they are just kind of a technical thing that not very fun to deal with, and this tutorial would be super long if I tried to fix all these UVs. So I'm just going to leave them as they are right now. The important part is that they're all inside of this 0 to 1 UV texture space, and that we don't have any overlapping UVs. That's probably the most important thing, is none of your UVs are overlapping each other. Okay, So let's just see what that looks like, and we bring it over to Painter. The UVs are good enough right there. Real quickly, before we go over to Painter, I'm going to just show you kind of a new workflow for this. So I'm going to take the rock and I'm going to duplicate it. And the new one that I have, I'm going to call that rock underscore high. Okay, and I'm going to call the other one, the original one, rock underscore low. Alright, and the reason I named it that specifically is that's the naming convention that Substance Painter uses whenever you're baking maps. Okay, so I'm going to hide the low poly version, or the low, rock low. Right now they're exactly the same. And I'm going to try to add some sculpted detail onto this, but I'm sure that the girl that made this rock, I'm not saying her name since it's being broadcasted, wants to retain the shape of all of this. So if I were to smooth it out to increase the polygon count, it's going to get very rounded off, and I think that she does not want that. So let's try to retain the shape before we add some sculpted detail onto it. And back to here. Make sure I didn't actually do that smooth. Good, okay. So one way we can add a lot more polygons and still retain the shape and not have it get smoothed out like that. Let's go look at the options for the smooth command, first of all. So mesh, smooth, and then a little box next to it. You see there's some options here for what type of subdivision it uses, sharp edges. So in this case, we actually don't want to use smooth at all. We can use a subdivision proxy instead. So if we go to our modeling, actually let's stay in the same menu here. Down under all of that at the bottom it says smooth proxy. And I'll choose subdivision proxy. Let's choose that. And you'll notice we have two versions of the rock. First one, the second one. And we are still losing a lot of that shape. So let's see what we can do about that. It got too smoothed out. And this isn't like a deal breaker. We could keep smoothing it and just add the detail and make it a little larger, it'd be fine.
Mr. Brooks?
Yeah.
Didn't you just do the add divisions?
What's that?
The add divisions on the modeling toolkit?
Yeah, it says the same thing as smooth proxy. Yeah, it's just, when you do it this way, it gives you another version. Yeah. Yeah, so this is helpful because then you get kind of two versions and you can look back at the other one. Alright, so let's go even further. Back up there. Kind of explaining too much for this tutorial. There we go. Okay, so we got a lot more subdivisions now. Let's bump it, just go crazy to where you can't even see any of the polygons anymore. Because we're going to add a lot of surface detail. Okay, so now that it's chugging and thinking about it, there we go. So that's probably enough. And we can check to see how many we have if we go to display, heads up display, and poly count. There we go. So we got almost 400,000 faces as opposed to 384. So quite a lot more. Okay, so now let's get the sculpting tools that are in Maya, the same ones that are in Mudbox, and load a stamp into the sculpting brush. So just need to go to our tool settings. I'll go to there. Make sure the sculpting brush is selected. I'm going to stamp, and I'm going to use the stamp that's already loaded in here. We could hit pick stamp if we wanted to pick something that looks a little more rocky. There's stones. I think that's fine what I have though. So now, we're going to sculpt some detail into this. make my brush pretty large. And you see what's happening there? So I can just get some surface detail onto there. And this is all possible because we gave it a lot more polygons to look at.
Wait, I'm sorry, how did you get this thing again?
Get the stamp?
Yeah.
I went and make sure I had the sculpting, this is actually just the sculpt tool. If you double click on it over on the left side, it'll open up your tool settings. And then stamp is actually a drop down menu underneath that. Stamp,
Oh, okay.
and then you can choose pick stamp.
Awesome.
And depending on the kind of rock or whatever it is you're doing, you may want to use a different stamp.
Thank you.
There we go. And you can do things like increase the strength, just to kind of vary it up a little bit, so there's not all of the exact same texture. We do have randomized rotation on, which is kind of cool. Basically, while you're painting, it kind of randomly changes where the stamp is.
Do you have to add sculpted things, or can
No,
you
this
just
is,
leave it
you don't
as-
have to do any of this. This is just an example.
Okay.
So I'm going to turn up my strength a lot. And let's see here. Whoa. So you have to be careful with your strength though. Look at that.
Yeah,
I
I just did that.
Very easy to go way too hard on your strength. So usually I'm going to dial that strength back to like almost nothing. I mean, I'm at 0.9, almost nothing, and it's still really strong. Now actually this is a good example. So let's say I went too hard, right? And it's just way too much rocky of a surface. If you hold shift down, it'll smooth that out. So you can just kind of vary it back and forth between the two. And then you also have, just like we were doing in Unity, if you hold control while you're sculpting, it will do the opposite and dig into the mesh as opposed to going up. So you may want to just kind of randomly choose, hit control while you're sculpting to dig in, do a little bit of smoothing with shift, and also just normal sculpting. So we just get some surface detail on here to make it look a little more realistic. Something like that. I'm just covering the entire surface of the rock so it looks somewhat realistic. Here we go. And I'm not doing a detailed job here, I'm just kind of doing this for an example. Just want to get the whole rock covered. You also may want to increase spacing. When you increase the spacing, it won't paint over itself so easily, which is usually what you want when you're doing a stamp. Something like that. And this is a very rocky surface, so it almost looks like an asteroid or something. Okay, so now let's change up the stamp. Let's go get something that looks more like cracks. Just to vary it up some, because you don't want to have the exact same thing all the way through it. There's not a ton in here. You can go make your own stamps as well, which is pretty easy to do. Okay, I'll just choose this color noise. Let's see which one would be good. Bristol, brush noise. I'll just choose the stones. See how that looks. And turn my spacing down a little bit. There we go. Yeah, this is kind of cool. It gives like a little bit of a, make this a little smaller. Kind of creates some more cracks or ridges. So I'm really just kind of randomly smoothing and placing more sculpts make it a little more realistic looking. Okay, something like that. Okay, so again, you would want to spend a lot more time making it look a little more perfect, but I'm just going to move on to the next step. So there's a rock. We've got some sculpted detail on it. This is our high poly version, and we also have our low poly version. Okay, and we know that they have good UVs because we checked that before we duplicated it. So our high UV mesh should still look fine. Good. All fits in there. Alright, so now we just want to export this out properly. But let's go ahead and save the file first. So I'll do a increment and save. That way we get a different version of it at the top. Alright, so now we need to export out two different files, the low and the high. So select the low first and go to File, Export Selection. And we'll save it to the desktop. And I'll just call this rock underscore low. Alright, so make sure you have FBX chosen as the file type at the bottom. And we need to check some of the settings in FBX. So let's look under geometry and make sure that only smoothing groups and reference assets content is selected. I think by default it says smooth mesh, and you don't want to do that because that's going to change the form of it. So those two selected under geometry. I have cameras and lights turned off. I have embed media on. And version is 2016, 2017.
Wait, is it export to online file?
Export selection.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, because we want to just export the rock low, so we're choosing File, Export Selection. Hello. Okay, we're just doing a demonstration right now. Alright, so after you've exported the low poly version, then you can select rock high and go to File, Export Selection. Same as before, rock underscore high. And again, your settings should be the exact same as they were before, but just make sure smoothing groups is on and reference assets is on. And then export selection. There we go. So now we have two FBX files that we can bring into Substance Painter and start making it look beautiful. Alright, so there we go. I don't see mine. Where did I export them to? Make sure you realize where you're exporting them to. So File, Export Selection. Oh, look at that. I was exporting mine in the wrong spot. They were going inside of Documents, Maya. So always make sure you choose desktop so you know where you're exporting it to. So I'll just re-export it. Rock underscore high.
Where did you go to change the settings?
For FBX? Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to choose FBX at the bottom.
No, the settings for geometry.
Oh, they're under file type specific options. Include, and then geometry. This stuff doesn't matter that much, but smooth mesh definitely matters because it'll change the shape of your object if you don't do that. Okay, so rock high on desktop. Hey, Alex.
May I have an action?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and make sure that you have those in the same location, and then we can bring them into Substance Painter. Export selection. There we go. Okay, so we're done in Maya now, and we can go ahead and go back. sure I have them. There they are. Okay, so here's our two FBX files, and that's what we're going to bring into Substance Painter. So now we can launch Painter. Alright, so the Substance Painter is a little different. You'd think you could just double click the file and bring it in here, or open, you can't. You actually use File New when you start the Substance Painter project. You get this little pop-up dialog, and then for Mesh, you can hit Select and choose the low poly version, or the Rock Low first. Okay, so again, you don't have to do the high poly, low poly thing. She could have very easily just taken that Rock Low and brought it right over to Painter. After you do the UVs, of course. The UVs are important. Have to have those. I'm just showing you the high poly, low poly thing because this is another great thing that you can do with Painter, is bake out the maps for it. Okay, so here's our rock, the low version. And if we go to our texture set settings, which I don't see on mine. So if you don't see here, just go to View, Views, and Texture Set Settings. I somehow lost all my menus. Here we go. So in Texture Set Settings, there's a little button that says Bake Textures. So we're going to click that, and it gives us another little pop-up. And we're going to bake a normal map of our high poly version onto the low poly version. So if we go to output size and change this to 2048, that's usually the resolution I work at. Then we can go to high definition meshes and click this little icon to the right, go to our desktop and choose Rock High and open. There we go. And we don't need to bake a thickness map or an ID map. Thickness is for when you're making skin and you have to have a light going through the object for subsurface scattering. We don't need that, and that would take a long time. And we don't need an ID map because an ID map is for separating parts of your object, basically. And since this is just a single object, a rock, we don't need that. Alright, so that's it. So now we can hit Bake Textures. And what that's going to do is generate some maps for us that we can intelligently use to predefine our textures. And you'll see the normal maps already being applied on there, showing all of our surface detail. Now you can see some spots where I've kind of missed and didn't work out so good on the normal map baking. I'm not going to get into the details of all that right now. Basically, it's wherever the low poly mesh is intersecting the high poly, you want to fix that. Anyway, the point is we got some nice detail on here, and this is still a very low poly object to place in our Unity scene. Okay, so now that we got that, let's add some materials. So we're here in Substance Painter, and in the shelf in the bottom left, I'm going to go look at Smart Materials and see if we can find something that's rocky. There's some fabric, leather, wood. Yeah, there's not a lot of things for rock in here. So this would be a good time for us to jump over to the Substance Share site, where there's a bunch of free materials we can use. So in Substance Painter, in the upper left corner, there's a pink S. Click that, and it's going to take you to the Substance Share site, which is right here. And log into that. You do have to have an Allegorithmic account to do this, but it's free. You can make one. Alright, I'm going to go to Smart Materials, see if I can find, there's tin rock, here we go. Obsidian dwarven slabs, Egyptian sandstone, mossy stone. And see, this is the thing, we could actually apply a couple of different ones and make a couple of different rocks out of the same object. That'd be a good idea. So how about mossy stone for one? Download that. I'm gonna get the dwarven slabs. I don't know how good that's gonna look on a, I mean, it's very like blocky, so I don't know if that's gonna go good on a stone. So there's smart materials and then there's also regular materials, so we can use both.
Sorry, June.
Let's go down to,
Yeah, that's cool.
there's 59 rock materials, so quite a lot to choose from. Any of these look good to you out there? Castle wall. What kind of look were you going for?
I like, I can't see any of the names, but like a gray, like a gray rock.
Like a gray rock.
Yeah, like really stony,
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, more like cartoonish stony or realistic stony?
Realistic, like I like the idea of like it being like mossy.
Okay. Stylized rock generator. So there's a bunch of them on here you can use. I'm just going to choose this one, rock wall. Looks pretty good. So I'll download that. This one's pretty awesome. One cool thing about materials here in Substance Painter is a lot of them will have extra parameters you can adjust. Like this one has the ability to add snow and moss into the crevices and stuff, and that's pretty cool. So rock wall, I'm going to open up that zip file, and there is a SBSAR file in here. So I'm going to drag that out to the desktop. So an SBSAR file is just a substance material. That's what we want. And what was the other one I got? Mossy. There it is. Yeah, and the mossy rock is actually a smart material, which is why it's a .SPSM. So I'll show you the different ways to use those. Okay, so back in Painter, we're going to go to File and Import Resources, the top left, and then Add Resources. Make sure we're on the desktop, and we're going to choose Rock Wall and Mossy Rock. Okay, so the smart material, it knows what that is, but the rock wall, we have to tell it what it is. So undefined and choose base material. All right, import resources for the current session. Your options here are that you could actually import it into your shelf, so you would always have these materials even when you start a new project. But I usually always just choose current session, and if I need to bring something in, I just bring it in. Okay, imported, so now we have these two right here. And we'll start off with the mossy rock because that is a smart material. So I'll just drag the mossy rock over into our layers to make sure my layers are showing. And drag the mossy rock into here. See how that looks. These are user-created materials, so make sure that if anything weird does happen, it's because some random person just made it. My Substance Painter does not like that. It is just hung. Oh, here it comes. It's just taking a minute to generate. There we go. Look at that. That looks pretty good, in my opinion. Not bad.
How did you do that? I was having difficulty with it.
Pretty mossy. Okay. I will go back around and help you all individually. I realize this is kind of a lot of stuff you haven't done before. But look at that. Isn't that pretty good? You can see the rock and the moss. Not bad for a, what did we say, 300 polygon rock? I like it. Now there's no reason you couldn't add onto this too. Like maybe we want to use the mossy rock and the rock wall. So I'll just drag the rock wall into here also. And just like in Photoshop, these are all layers, so you could turn and blend them down into each other. You can also define masks, so only certain parts of the object have. Okay, my Substance Painter's thinking about it for a second. Kind of taxing my computer a lot. I have this broadcasting software and Maya and Substance Painter running, so why don't I go ahead and quit out of Maya. Okay, so I'm going to make a fill layer, which is up at the top, looks like a little paint bucket. And because I added a fill layer, it's going to just make my entire rock gray as soon as it loads in. While Substance Painter is thinking about it, I'm going to go check our chat and see if there's anybody in the chat right now. Uh-oh, the meme lord's in there. Skip. Oh, wow. Okay. Substance Painter's still thinking. And partially the reason it's taken so long to calculate that is when we bake the normal map, we put a lot of detail in there. I don't want this tutorial to take too much longer, so as soon as I show you the rock wall, let's go ahead and get this put out to Unity. Alright, so again, I added a fill layer by just clicking the little paint bucket icon at the top of the layer stack. I've turned off my mossy rock layer just so we can see what this rock wall looks like. So I just drug it up onto here. And sorry, I didn't even need to make a fill layer. I forgot you can actually just drag a material in to do that. So here is our rock wall. I kind of like this more. It's got a lot more detail in it. That looks pretty awesome, actually. It's amazing what a good substance material will do to make your model look a million times better. Look at that. So let's go inside the rock wall in the properties and just make a few little adjustments before we export it out. So view, views, properties, make sure your properties are up. And check it out. So down inside the rock wall, we've got moss, we've got snow, we've got water drips. Let's turn on the water drips. So there's already a little bit of snow and moss on this, but let's increase the moss amount. And we can also hit random. There's a random seed button. We can just hit that and it's going to randomly change the way things look. So if you see a part of your rock you don't like, might be good to do that. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the way that rock looks. That rock wall texture is pretty awesome. Oh, it's regenerating. It'll take a second. I'm afraid that I might have turned the moss way too high. We'll see in a second. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that material looks, though.
Yeah, it looks good. Good job, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Alright, as soon as this red line finishes generating, and if I still like it, we will export. What time is it? Oh, we got plenty of time.
Did you figure it out? No. Ask yourself next time.
Oh man, there's a serious lag happening on my stream. The broadcasting software I'm using is pretty intense on the computer.
Oh, but this, we will get it, you guys.
That's probably why my Substance Painter is taking so long.
This, we need the lights. Four new lights.
Well, I love the fog. It adds a lot of nice atmosphere.
Mr. Brooks, apparently I followed the instructions on the YouTube video. It's not seeming to let me click the edges. Once I right click and go up to edge and then try to select them all, it doesn't let me select it.
What are you doing?
The solar panel, I'm on to the next project.
Okay. Just wait until after we finish the broadcast. Okay?
And Mr. Burke, I could like essentially like if I wanted to do like a log too, or like some other thing that I wanted to add to my Unity scene, I could just do this too, essentially.
Yeah, just think about it as each part as a separate project
Mhm.
that you put together in Unity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So a log or whatever, character, or doesn't matter. There may be times where you want to have them together, like let's say a tree and a rock and a bale of hay all in one project. You may want to do that, but usually not. Usually you want to keep them separate. Yeah, so normally it doesn't take this long, especially for such a simple project. Oh, okay. Looks like it's finished. It's got a bit more moss on it. I guess it's okay for now. Made it a little more shiny. But it's really cool though. You can see, I mean, look at this right here. I didn't put those little gashes in the side. See that? I didn't do that. That's just part of the material. Pretty amazing. Okay, so here's our low poly rock, and we want to bring this over into Unity. So all we have to do is, I'm going to trash these extra layers real quick. Not that that matters. There, and that one. Just to clean this up a little bit. So first I'm going to save my Substance Painter file. So save under the file menu, and I'll call it rock 1. Because you may have several different types of rocks you want to use in your scene. So I call it rock 1. Save that to the desktop, and then we need to export out the textures. So file, export texture, and here's the important part. You need to change your configuration. Scroll down to where it says Unity 5, and I usually use the standard metallic workflow, which is kind of more universal. So choose Unity 5, standard metallic. That's going to export out these maps, so 4 different maps, to apply onto a rock in Unity. So export that up. And open folder. Okay, this is where I exported some other things, but let's see, Cyclops. Is that really all I have? Now also be careful about where you're exporting it to. I didn't exactly put it in the right spot. Let's go inside Documents, Substance Painter 2, Export. That's fine, but I'll just change this to desktop again. And I'm going to make a folder on the desktop and call it rock. Okay, so this time it's going to export out our, should be, oh, we don't have any emission, so it's just three different maps. Okay, so here's our 3 maps. All right, so now we want to take our low poly, our rock low FBX, and these 3 textures and bring them over to Unity. So I'll quit out of Substance Painter, launch Unity. And I think this is just the example I used yesterday for you guys on how to build a terrain. So we'll just put it inside of there. Okay. Yeah, here we are. I've got a lot of compile errors down here from some of the scripts I was using. There we go. Okay, so here's the scene we had created before, and to get our FBX file into Unity, all we have to do is drag it in to our project pane. You can, of course, right-click and go to Import New Asset, or you can go to File, or Asset menu, and Import New Asset. I like to just drag stuff in now. So drag your rock low FBX into here, and also your textures. So I put those in a rock folder somewhere. I put that on my desktop, did I not? Rock, there it is. Okay, so I'm just going to drag that entire rock folder into here. All right. And I'll go ahead and move the rock low FBX inside of the rock folder, just to keep it organized. So rock low is right here, and we can just drag that right into the scene. And you'll notice it's very tiny, so I'm going to change the scale of the model right here in the inspector before I drag it in. So right there's rock low, and I'll just change this to, I don't know, 20, and hit apply. So now when I bring the rock in, look at that, there he is, little rock. And I'm going to make it bigger just so we can see the textures a little better. Alright, so here's our rock, and right now in the material there are no textures loaded into it. So just have your rock selected in the scene, open up your material, make sure it says standard right there, and then we're going to drag our maps in. So albedo transparency goes into albedo, and metallic smoothness goes into metallic, and normal goes into, oops, normal goes into the normal map slot, right here. Now it looks wrong, doesn't it? And the reason for that is the normal map needs to be flagged as a normal map. So select it in the project, and then over here under texture type, change that to normal map, and then hit apply. There we go. There's our low poly rock inside of Unity, and if I get my directional light, where the heck is it? Way up here. So you put that inside of the rock, and then I'm going to reset its position so it's in the same location as the rock. There we go. The reason I did that is I want to spin the lighting around so we can see the texture on the rock a little better inside of Unity. Here we go. Get my rotate tool and just rotate that light around so we can see all the detail. There it is. So now you have a pretty detailed looking low poly rock from Maya into Substance Painter and then into Unity. If you have any questions about that entire process I just went over, feel free to ask. And if you are tuned in and you're not in my classroom, thank you for watching.
Wait, Mr. Brooks, can you do that whole thing one more time?
What?